I am extremely interested in an amendment proposed by Senator Orrin Hatch and Senator John Cornyn, because I feel this amendment is the surest way to get the government under control. And this amendment is being opposed by a large majority, if not all, the Democrats. So I asked Senator Hatch to come on and explain this. I've talked about it earlier this week. Senator Hatch, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing good. How are you?
Very well, my friend. Very well. This is crucial. Tell everybody about this amendment.
Well, it really is. If you stop and think about it, our nation is in a financial crisis. It's getting worse every day. It's fueled by runaway spending that's reached now, get this, 25% of GDP. Our national debt has increased by more than 25% in just the last 2 years. And the Congressional Budget Office says it's already nearly two-thirds the size of our economy, and within 9 years could be 90%, which is unsustainable. So I announced yesterday a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, and this amendment will set effective limits on federal spending and taxes and require a balanced budget. Admiral Mike Mullen, for instance, he's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He calls our debt, quote, the most significant threat to our national security, unquote. Even Secretary of State Hillary Clinton warns that the debt, and she says, quote, sends a message of weakness internationally, unquote. So it has national security as well as economic implications. And what our proposed amendment does, well, first of all, year after year, decade after decade, Congress proves that it will not solve this crisis on its own. There are just simply too many ways for Washington here to avoid controlling its spending and balancing its budget. But we can't allow that continued failure and deepening budget crisis to continue. We just can't. Now, our annual budget deficit is more than 10 times what it was in 1997, when the U.S. Senate came within one vote of approving my constitutional amendment, which is basically the same as this one. We had 66 votes in the Senate. We lacked one vote. The crisis is even worse today. It's not going to solve itself. Millions of working families across the country, they balance their checks every year. Why can't the government do the same? So I believe that the balanced budget is absolutely critical, because every time there's been a grand budget compromise in the 80s and the 90s, spending was reduced for a while, taxes were raised, and the crisis was forestalled, but only for a short time. What happened is the tax increases remained, but the spending started increasing again almost as soon as these grand budget deals were done. So the tax increases were not used to tackle deficits, but they ended up being used to fund more spending. Now look, that shows why we need a constitutional amendment. It's the only ironclad way I know to force our nation to live with it.
Now, Senator, this amendment would do very specific things. That's why it is crucial.
Well, let me tell you what it does. It mandates that total budgetary outlays for any fiscal year not exceed total revenues, unless you have a two-thirds vote to overturn that. Now, that's what families across America do every day. They don't spend more than they have. It caps federal spending at 20% of GDP. Now, if we don't bring spending, we're now spending 25% of GDP. That's a huge, huge expenditure. Now, if we don't get those spending levels brought down to more historic levels, some want to go further, bringing it down below 20%. And I appreciate that passion and agree with them. But in order to get enough people on board on this proposal to ensure it has a real chance of passage, we settled on 20%. It requires the president to submit a balanced budget to Congress every fiscal year. Now, every state in this union but Vermont has some form of balanced budget amendment. Germany has one. The Swiss have one. I think it's time our nation does as well. Now, it also prohibits revenue-raising measures that are not approved by two-thirds of both the House and Senate. In other words, you can't increase taxes without a two-thirds vote. That's a big-time provision. And then provisions can be waived if there is a formal declaration of war, or if the U.S. is engaged in a military conflict constituting a threat to national security, or if two-thirds of both the House and the Senate approve.
Isn't this similar to what Milton Friedman originally proposed?
Oh, yeah, Milton and I worked together on this.
Yeah.
Hey, I go all the way back to 1977. And really in 1982, Senator Thurman and I brought the first balanced budget, at least the first one at that time, to the floor. And we actually won. During the Reagan years, we actually had, I think, 69 votes. You have to have 67. We actually won, and then, of course, the House killed it under Tip O'Neill. So But that actually happened. Now, we've got another thing going for us at this time. Well, let me just say this. It's important that we have a national security exception. But also...
well, let me ask you this. In the Senate, you've got 19 others who've joined you and Cornyn. So my count
we're now up to 23 sponsors of this amendment. And I call them sponsors because I think everyone on that amendment, constitutional amendment, can claim that it's their amendment.
All right, so that's a quarter of the Senate, maybe.
Well, it's half of the Republicans, and frankly,
half the Republicans.
And frankly, we're going to get a bunch more. I mean, we haven't had enough time to get all the people we'd like.
Any Democrats so far show any inclination?
But they'll come. Let me tell you something.
Let me tell you something, Senator. I hate to say, we're going to defeat these people because we cannot allow this to go on like this. We can't let Chuck Schumer to keep running this place.
Hey, did you hear me say that we're going to 90% of
That's
our
scary.
GDP? We can't do that and survive. We can't do it. Now, there's a method in their madness. You know, if you look at what they've done, you know, when the president took over, the bottom 40% of all wage earners. Now, I'm not even talking about those on welfare. There's a huge number on welfare, but the bottom 40% of all wage earners who were getting largesse from the federal treasury and don't pay a dime in income taxes. That's now up in 2 years under Obama to almost 50%. And if they had that make worth pay thing go through, I think they'd push it up to 60%. Now, that doesn't even include all of the people who are on welfare. And these are people who work, but who they don't pay anything in income taxes. And to be frank with you, they don't have any skin in the game. And so they believe that, and it's going to be more if we keep these people in power. And they believe that everything they are ever hope to be comes from these liberals in the United States Congress.
You know, you got
Democrats.
You got 66 votes. That is amazing. Back in 1997.
In 1997, that's right. And I couldn't get it over the edge to get the 67th vote. Now, I think we can do it this time. Do you realize that the governors in this country are so upset that I think the National Governors Association is going to come behind this amendment? And if they do, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the on the big spenders around here. Now, let's understand something else. The American Conservative Union backs it. The Americans for Prosperity backs it. The Americans for Tax Reform back it. They all support this effort. And
I back it, and that's what matters more than all the rest of them put together. Now, let me tell you this, Senator, seriously on this. We have to keep up on this, keep at this, even if it's voted down, even if they oppose. You know, the left just never gives up, and we can't give up either.
We're not going to. I've had 34 years of this where I've been pushing this, and we've had some real highs and we've had some real lows. But I think with 24 Democrats up, or in essence 24 seats up, and only 10 or 11 Republicans, I think it's going to be very tough for them to vote against this. But it's apparent with only 47 Republicans, we're going to have 20 Democrats vote for this. And so we've got to work on the Democrats, and I believe we can. If we could get 66 back in 1997, we ought to be able to get 67 today.
Now, how come there aren't more Republicans yet? It's just it takes them time to sign their name to something, or what?
Well, there are other Republicans who think who have amendments too, and I think I have no objection to that. I think nobody has perfect language, but I do know what sells, and I do pretty well know what we've got to do. In fact, I've been leading this fight for so many years, and they're probably there's some we haven't gotten to yet as well.
They're probably saying that 20% is too high. My attitude is, well, if we can get 67 to go with 20%, that beats 25%.
Oh, it beats it tremendously. I mean, you can't imagine the hundreds of billions of dollars that means. And let me say, we chose that number. I mean, one of the amendments that one of the people has is at 18%. Well, you could make an argument for that. The problem is, can you get the votes? And right now, we want to get the votes, because if we could get this constitutional amendment ratified by Well, if we could get the 67 votes in the Senate, I think we'd have a good chance of getting them in the House. In fact, Congressman Goodlatte is leading the fight over in the House. He's a partner in this, and he has well over 100 co-sponsors in the House of this amendment. And if we can do that, we can get it. If we get it through the Senate, we'll get it through the House, and then it'll be submitted to every state in the union. Mm-hmm. And then we've got to get, we've got to get 3/4 of the states or 38 states to sign off on it. And we can. I think we can if we all band together and we just say we've gone long enough without doing this, and we know that Congress is institutionally incapable of really getting this done without the prodding.
It really is, because temporary politicians are kicking the ball down the road, and they just keep piling on, and somebody at the end is going to be holding it and say, what the hell happened here?
Well, that's right. Well, we have lots of good Republican governors who agree with us on this. And, I don't have any objections to others trying to come up with amendments, but it's a question of what can we pass, what can bring more and more people on. The more members that support a balanced budget amendment, the better. That's how we generate the enthusiasm we need to get across this line. But Senator Cornyn and I have worked very hard on this balanced budget amendment. He's an excellent leader, having been on the Supreme Court of the state of Texas, as well as an outstanding senator. And we brought a lot of members on board by working with him. We believe it's a strong proposal that will have the support of our colleagues.
You even have Olympia Snowe.
Yeah, Olympia came on. I was really pleased, and I think that's partly we have a great relationship, and she's on my finance committee with me. I just got elected today as the Republican leader on the finance committee. So all of these, and there are very few people who understand this as much as I do.
All right, my friend. Well, this is very, very crucial. I completely understand what you're up to here, and this is fundamental. So I appreciate it. Keep at it.
Well, can I add one other thing?
Sure.
Some people say this is opportunistic, that Republicans really aren't serious about this. Are you kidding? I've sponsored or co-sponsored this bill 23 times during my service in the U.S. Senate. I'm really serious about working to get it passed. I've got 23 sponsors on this bill. And beside that, as I already mentioned, in 1997, we did come within one.
Listen, I'm going to have to go. I have a hard break, but let me tell you something, Senator.
Yeah.
The people who tell you this is opportunistic, please ignore them. I know who they are. They're coming from the left. They don't want you to succeed. This proposed amendment is crucial. As a matter of fact, it's in my book, Liberty and Tyranny. Go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
I'm going to, and we're going to get there because of good people like you.
All right. God bless you.
God bless you.
Take care. All right. Folks, this is important. Now, we got to do more than this. But this is the sort of thing that is fundamental. Limiting the percentage of the economy the government can take, period. Putting it in the Constitution, putting a supermajority vote from both houses to rate taxes beyond that, with certain emergency exceptions. We can get it. We need to get it. There's more we need to do, but we need to begin. Now, limiting the amount the federal government can spend to 20% of the gross domestic product. Would I like to see it at 18%? Yes. But it's currently at 25%. It's more than a balanced budget amendment. It is a control the growth of government amendment. This is Milton Friedman's idea, and Senator Hatch said he worked with Milton Friedman in developing this amendment. Because when Milton Friedman was asked, what would you do in terms of an amendment to the Constitution that would be the most effective way to control, out of control spending? And this is what Friedman came up with. And it was brilliant. And supermajorities to raise revenue beyond the 20%. Compelling the president to propose a balanced budget. You know how they always say, where's the cuts? Where are the cuts? Well, the president's going to have to propose them himself. This is crucial. I don't know if any other hosts are talking about it, but I'm going to keep talking about it because this is one of the things that can reestablish our constitutional government. We'll be right back.